Change Z. We've been away for a little bit, but now we're back. And that's what matters. I'm Alex.
I'm Mekhi.
I'm Taranpreet.
So yeah, we've been away for a little bit because the end of the school year was a busy time for all of us. But we do want to thank you guys for watching us so far, and a big thank you to NCS for shouting us out as a part of their Changemaker scheme recently as well. We really appreciate it. Some of the new people that have discovered us because of that, say hello to you and hello to people coming back. And we're going to continue with something that we started just before we took a little hiatus, which was a little series on racism. Now, last time we talked about Asian hate, the spike of Asian hate crimes in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this time we're going to look at sort of aggressions towards the Black community, the African-American community over in the States, and have a look at, how things have changed, because a little known fact about the podcast is we tried to record an episode last year, and a big sector of that podcast was taken up with discussions about George Floyd and the BLM protests over the summer. So where do you guys think we are now, a year on from those events? Where do you think we've got to at this moment in time?
Honestly, I don't really think much has changed on an institutional level. Like, obviously, the policemen that did murder George Floyd, they were arrested and they were persecuted, and I think they got a sentence. But like, institutionally, there's not really much has changed. There's not really like more laws for protection of Black people. You could still discriminate against Black people in hospitals, in public, and there's not really anything that's done because police are still being racist and still having using an over excessive amount of force on Black people and on Black suspects.
I feel like this was like a big issue at that time as well, where many people were bringing up that it kind of just felt like a trend where everyone was changing their profile pictures, they were putting in their bios, and obviously that black square on Instagram. But the thing is that it can't just be a trend. You can't talk about it for 2 months. It needs to be something that you need to keep having this conversation again and again. You need to talk about it to everyone. You need to educate yourself, educate your friends until there is change. And as Mekhi said, I personally don't think there's much change yet either.
I've seen a bunch of videos on social media of police brutality and like police being racist towards Black people, and rather than like the policemen listening to Black people and listening to like what they have to say and how to change and how to be equal and fair, they are starting to play copyrighted music in hopes that the videos that are being recorded of them showing brutality and being racist are taken down because of copyright infringement and all the fair use policies. So they're playing like copyright like the Beatles, like Taylor Swift, all these copyright musics to try and get videos taken down off the internet of them being thing. That's not how things should be. That's not how, because if they're doing that, they're aware that they are being racist and they are doing something wrong, but they don't want to accept that consequence and accept that they are doing something wrong, and they just want to try and hide it and push it under the rug like it never happened.
The police on its own in the system, they have no issues with other police officers doing that. It's more the people that sort of then say, actually, that's not right. And then they sort of try and bring justice to it. Like the officer who murdered George Floyd, he had already previously had 18 complaints and he'd shot 3 times, one of them being fatal. He should not been a police officer anymore. But the most he got was 3 days away from work, and that's it.
One of the most fascinating things, at least for me, about the American justice system is this idea of, I think, qualified immunity is the term they use, wherein police officers have such wide-scale protection from like police unions that it's almost impossible to prosecute a police officer in any situation. Like, it's almost impossible to bring them to justice, have them in court. Like, the fact that Derek Chauvin even got a sentence in the first place, like that 22.5 years, that is insane when you look at the scope of protection that police officers receive in America. Like, you can have complaints levied against you all day long, but at the end of the day, not a whole lot is going to happen to you just because of the sheer amount of protections that police officers have. And it's something with the ACAB hashtag that was going around, lots of people were complaining about the B in that hashtag. And if you're familiar with it, you'll know what it stands for. But it's because of the system they're a part of, not necessarily the individuals within that system. And obviously, when that much power can go to your head, things like this are going to happen. That's with the nature of the job. Not that these people are bad people or fundamentally racist people are going into the police force. It's just the police are constantly upholding that, because police education is centered around shoot first and try and come to a compromise later. It's because that police system is being heavily protected. And that is a system that needs to change, because especially in a world where, while it's always been complex, but only really in the past 2 decades come to really realize the intricacies of those complexities with how autistic people struggle when they're confronted by the police, and that often escalates to violence. When there are Black people going about their business and police are treating them as hostile, there's so much within the police system that needs to be fundamentally altered. And yet people will hear that hashtag and they'll complain that it's attacking the individual police officers, when actually it's all about trying to uproot this change that needs to happen, this fundamental alteration at like a grassroots level, in a way that the police officers, when they do something like kill a Black person, they can be prosecuted for it in a just way. But that isn't really something in the year, as much as there's been a lot more social awareness about it now, not much has actually come of it.
Mm-hmm. I just want to go back to Taranpreet's point of like how the whole BLM thing was a trend, and how like all like Instagram was all putting like Black pictures on their profile and stuff like that. I just don't think like people, especially like white people in general, realize like the amount of privilege that they do have by the color of their skin, and how much like power they do hold because they are white. Because media especially really like favors white people, and they listen to white voices more than they do Black voices, and that's just how media is. Mm-hmm. And I just don't feel like enough white people are accepting the fact that racism does exist. I feel like they have an attitude like, oh well, I don't experience racism, I've never seen racism, so how can it exist? But they just ignore the countless amount of Black people and the countless amount of people of color that are telling them to their face, racism does exist. Racism exists on an institutional level in governments. Racism does affect me and other people like me every single day. And I don't understand why they can't just accept that fact.
I think another thing that I really dislike that I've heard people say is, I don't see colour, I don't see race. And the thing with that is, if you don't see colour and you don't see race, then you're pretty much disregarding every issue that the Black community faces on a daily basis, because you're basically saying, well, if I don't see colour, then I don't think you get oppressed based on your colour.
If you don't see colour, you're not acknowledging me as a Black person, you're not acknowledging the struggles I go through, you're not acknowledging all the history that Black people have had to face, and all like our tough history that we've had. You're just completely disregarding that if you don't see colour. Like if you don't, I like what Anissa said. Anissa said, because he said it in the previous podcast. It's like if you don't see colour, you don't see me. And I just feel that's a really powerful statement.
I think the big issue is with education, because there's just not enough education, and that's why people end up saying things like, I've never seen racism. It's because they don't even know how to recognize racism. As someone who has experienced racism, I can easily point it out. Even just like little microaggressions, I can easily point them out, and I recognize that as racism. But I don't think other people who haven't been around it, who haven't like experienced it, they wouldn't see that as racism. And I think another thing with that is, because you have this constant fear in your mind, then there are certain things that might not be what they seem, but you view them as that because you have this constant fear in your mind.
For the first time because I've had a very white, like I've said before on the podcast, I've had a very whitewash upbringing. I've not really had to deal with racism, well, luckily I haven't had to deal with racism. But for the first time, I was genuinely scared to walk out in the street, because you know how like the whole thing in England now about how we lost the game, and then a bunch of white men are now starting to be racist towards Black people. I saw on social media there was this point system, and I don't know if I'm allowed to. I don't know if I'm not going to say a slur, but it was like hit an N word, hit a female N word, run over like an N word person. And for the first, I saw that and it really upset me. It did really bring me to tears because it's just upsetting. And then I was walking on the street and this car was driving really close to me. And for the first time, I genuinely thought he was going to run me over because I saw in the driver, like I saw in the front window, and the driver was white, and I was terrified that he was going to run me over because of that point-based system I saw. It made me feel I was genuinely terrified. I was hugging the wall. I was trying to go as far away as I can from that car that I could because I thought he was going to run me over.
The thing with that is that young people are going to consume that media, and that's my point. When you have this fear in your mind, everything just becomes more than it is. So, yes, if you've seen that there's a chance that someone's going to run you over because there's this point system, you're going to have that fear with every car. And the fact this car slowed down and you noticed it was a white person, that would scare you. And the thing is, there are people younger than us out there who are on Instagram, who are on all these social media that are going to consume this racist medias, and they're going to have really negative beliefs about themselves, and they are going to be scared to go outside.
The first thing with social media as well, casual racism is such like a prevalent thing, and it's not called out enough. Because at the end of the day, racism, it's a taught behavior. Kids aren't inherently, or like people aren't inherently racist at birth. It's a taught behavior that we learn from like an environment and what we see. And as children on social media, especially like children like 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, they are very impressionable to information that's out there. And when they see casual racism, they'll think that's okay. And then casual racism turns into more violent racial beliefs, like the point system.
I think there are definitely some racist things that young people, like my classmates, have said to me that I know for a fact is something they've heard from their parents. So when people come up to me saying stuff like, oh, you probably live on benefits, you do this, you do that, I know for a fact that's something they've picked up from their parents, because parents have a tendency to sit there complaining about how all these other people are coming from these countries and living off the government and how they're paying taxes. No child, like around the age of 12 to 14, knows about benefits and going up to someone and saying, you probably live on benefit. Like, the fact they saw me, recognized me as a brown person, and then came up to me and said, you live on benefits, that's something they've heard from their parents. And parents need to be really conscious about what they're saying around their kids.
Because young children don't have the experience, or like they haven't lived long enough to experience the actual world, and their view of the world is very close-minded, and that a huge part of their world that they view is their parents. And obviously kids look up to their parents, and yeah, as you said, like parents don't understand like how much what they say their kids take in and take that as truth.
Another thing with that is, I feel like we get to a point in our life where we start challenging our parents' views and we start building our own. And school is also so important in helping us do that. But if school is also just turning a blind eye to racism, letting it just happen, then you will never end up challenging your parents' views. So people who've grown up with racist parents and racist figures in their family, and they then go to school and it's the same sort of thing, they're never going to get out of that mindset, and that will become their own views. And like Mekhi said, that's what results in this really aggressive and violent racist things.
The education system as a whole fails us in teaching us about Black history, especially the huge part that England had in Black history with colonization and slavery. That is not taught. Well, it's in the curriculum, but it's not a compulsory part of the curriculum, and teachers choose not to teach it. But it's something, especially us as black people and people of color, should learn about colonization, because it's a huge part of our history, and I
think it's very easy to look at how far we've come in terms of social awareness from what our generation has experienced on social media and go, well, at least we're taking a step in the right direction. As much as our generation can be taking a step in the right direction, on the grand scheme of things, it's more like one step forward and not even two steps back, like way, way more, loads more steps back, because, you know, there are going to be things like colonialism that need to be taught in this country that the government may genuinely go out of their way to turn down learning because they don't want to promote an anti-nationalist message or that sort of thing. They don't want to demean the country's image that they've presented. And I understand that want to be house proud and to promote the best parts of your country. But when you're in that position of power, you cannot afford to sacrifice learning about the bad things to only promote positives. Every, like, I forgot the phrase. Every coin has a reverse side. You know, there's going to be a good side and there's going to be a bad side. You have to acknowledge both in order to fully understand this country. And on that basis, we don't really understand this country. We're not taught how to understand this country because we don't know that. If you turn your attention over to America, in Texas, they have ruled that they don't need to teach Black history and they don't need to teach Native American history in Texan schools. And in that same breath, you don't have to teach your children in Texas that the KKK were morally wrong. That bill passed, I remember reading about that within the past week sometime, maybe even a few days ago. But like, when you get to a stage where you're actively undoing progress that people have made, it is down, unfortunately, to parents to teach their kids. It should be the responsibility of schools. But again, like as I was saying in the last episode, schools are not being given that toolkit. They're not being provided fundamentally with the tools they need to educate people. So it's going to be down to those teachers who want to teach their kids more, going out of their way, finding their own resources to help their students. And it's going to be down to parents making sure that they pass on that knowledge to their kids as well.
I think with that, like we were talking about with the police system, if the system is corrupt, then no matter how good you are, you can't do anything, because at the end of the day, there are these rules set out which disadvantage people of color, and you kind of just have to follow these rules. But the problem with that is it goes way bigger. Everyone sort of lives in a system. We have a government. So when that is corrupt, then you kind of have to live with that as well. You can't really step out of it, which is why when people are working so hard to make this progress, that we're working so hard to bring awareness to these issues, but then things like this are happening that we can't control, and it's just making us go a lot further back.
I've seen videos on social media where white women who are like notoriously named like the Karens of like, you know, the classic like white woman kind of like thing, they're starting to be too aggressive and starting to try and assault Black women, and then turn around and go and play the victim and start saying that that the Black woman is hitting her, like threatening her, doing all these things to her. And the thing is as well, because of racism, when police arrive on the scene and when public aren't like standbys watching that scene, they will believe that white woman who was threatening the Black woman and hitting her and now playing the victim. They will believe that white woman, and then that will put the Black woman in danger, because when the police arrive, and they eventually will, they will see the Black woman as the aggressor and will treat her accordingly. And that's just, it doesn't create a safe world. It doesn't feel like, I don't feel safe walking in a world where I know that could happen to me and I could be in that situation. And I would be a victim. I could be seen as an aggressor just because of the color of my skin.
I didn't realize that I was doing this. It's one of those things that is like on such a level that a lot of people don't tend to think about very often. Like whenever I cross a road, I always make sure I smile and thank people on both sides whenever I cross the road. And I do it as like a courtesy thing, because I never wanted to be seen as, oh, I'm one of those antisocial teenagers. But now I genuinely do it as, I don't want to be seen as a negative Black person walking around, because I don't want someone to turn around and think, oh, he wasn't a very kind person. And then they take that internal frustration out on someone they see somewhere else down the road. Like I wanted to do that just as like a small way of signaling I'm one of the good ones. I just wanted to do it to signal that Black people are not actively aggressive, because I know my family, the Black side of my family, genuinely some of the most lovely people I've met. Like, and I've like my neighbors, family, friends, people I've met from church. They were like genuinely some of the most warm, loving people I've met of any race. And it's just like people from a distance can look at someone, only see the color of their skin, and associate that with negativity. And I just think it's like one of those small things that I just actively do to try and buck that trend.
I do a similar thing at work as well, where I know my voice isn't that high, but if I make my voice a little bit higher, I seem less aggressive, because obviously a high voice, people associate that with, you know, being more passive and more thing, and I do that as well at work. It's not the same thing, but it's a similar kind of thing.
It's like Alex said, it's like they almost just see the color of our skin. But then when we address our fears of, like, when we see a white person, sometimes we tend to get a bit scared because, you know, we've read all these things, we've seen all these things. They tend to just turn around and be like, oh, that's racist. That's really racist. You can't say stuff like that to me. It's like when we say that's racist, then it's just ignored. And another thing with that, I'm sure you guys have seen The Hate U Give. So basically, there is like a book, and I was just reading about the book, and this person pretty much went on a rant, this like white person. They were like, I find this book very offensive. It's so racist towards white people. It's pretty much, if you don't know what the book is or the movie, it's basically about a police officer shooting a Black teenager, and the whole movie is about them protesting. And this person pretty much just went on a rant saying this movie is so racist to white people, it's so offensive. And like, that's literally what the movie is trying to show it's not. The movie is pretty much just saying that Black people are murdered and no one does anything about it. And if you see that as racism, then you are part of the issue.
Yeah.
I don't think white people realize that every person of color goes through this just period of self-hate, because everywhere we look it's just, you know, white this, white that. All the media we've consumed is white, especially when we were young. Obviously that's something that we as a generation are working towards changing, but most of the media we consumed when we were younger was with white people. It was only white features that were highlighted. And so you go through this like period of saying, well, I want to be lighter, I want to do this, I want to do that. And especially being from the Indian community where colorism is such a big thing, you know, they want you to be as light as possible. They don't consider you as beautiful until you're light. And I know I've like read about it a lot in like African countries as well. They, in India as well, they use like very dangerous bleaching methods to bleach their skin because they want to be lighter. And that's something that's not recognized enough, because we don't really get to be proud of our dark skin because all we're taught is white.
People really don't realize like how big of an issue colorism is, because you've got I want to say an example, like, so there's two celebrities. I'm not trying to like slander any of these celebrities, so I'm not trying to be like, you know, they're gross. But you got, for example, Zendaya, who is an actor, singer, who is praised a lot for all like the accomplishments she has. But then you've got an actor, Viola Davis. She is such a talented Black woman, and she's starred in so many movies and done so many like groundbreaking roles that she has played, and she's just so talented. She's yet to win an award because it is because of the color of her skin, and she's not seen as talented. Because if she would have had lighter skin, she probably would have won an award or like an Oscar for her performances. But because she was of a darker complexion, she just didn't. And like darker colored Black people as well, especially like in industries like sport and in music, aren't appreciated enough. Like, Black women do run majority of sports, but it was this woman, I forgot what her name was. She was saying Black women hold 80% of like art make up 80% of a specific sport, but only receive 50% of media coverage. And white people are praised more for doing the same things. Another thing that really annoys me as well, like on top of colorism, is that black women are seen as more masculine because of the color of their skin. And
wasn't there that thing where they were planning on like banning black women from certain sports because their level of testosterone is higher?
There probably was. It sounds like something that I think I've read that somewhere.
I do remember hearing something like that. I can't exactly pinpoint. I'll have a look for it.
Yeah, like it's like black women have to be hypersexual to be seen as feminine, and if a black woman isn't or dark skinned black woman isn't hypersexual, they are perceived as more masculine because of the color of their skin. And also another thing as well, like completely irrelevant thing, but black in America, med students are taught that black people have different liver and kidney functions than white people. So institutionally, black people are less likely to receive kidney transplants or liver transplants because of that false information that black people have different liver functions than white people, different kidney functions. At the end of the day, we're all human. The only thing that makes a black person is the amount of melanin they have in their skin.
I
The
think
amount of melanin they have in their skin.
it's sad to see the amount of black women that are scared to go into the doctors, and you shouldn't be scared of getting medical help when everyone else around you has access to it. So it's really sad to see that, and the amount of black women that have come out and said how bad their experience was when they finally went to the doctors.
There's an inherent lack of understanding when it comes to the biological makeup of people with different levels of melanin, different races. Like it even comes down to hair. That's one thing that I know is, I was watching the show Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, which is a really good show, really informative, really well structured and laid out as well. And he did a whole special. He's a white British guy living in America, but he did a whole 20-minute piece on how there was discrimination based on hair in America for black women, because there were women being fired for unprofessional hairstyles. Like if you go into a shop in America, there'll be white hair products on the cosmetic aisle, and then behind a glass box with a lock on it is all of the black women specific hair creams for
for more curly hair, more
3C, 4C. I didn't even realize until my sister was talking about it with my aunt, because she has a little girl now. I think she's got 3C hair. She's got different levels of hair, and I had no idea personally, even as a black male with a black aunt and a black sister, mixed race sister, I should say. I didn't know there were different levels of hairstyle that white women have, because you just don't learn about it.
I'm the same. I have curly hair, obviously, but I've never really known how to take care of it, because in media and in things, all I've seen is in movies is white people styling their hair and using gel. And I used to do that, and I feel now my hair is less curly because I used to use gel that's more specifically tailored to more straighter, whiter hair.
And
I still, to this day, I can't really find any reliable sources online or in media of how to style my hair properly, because I'm still no clue.
3 years I used Wilco's own brand hair gel, because I had 4 mixed race hair, this hair gel, but I didn't really like it. And because I didn't really know any alternatives, because I would only ever go into specialist hair shops for black hair to get that one thing. And because I didn't know much about it, I was should get some Wilco's own brand and use that for ages. And it just genuinely ruined my hair for years.
I used, I don't know, it's the blue one, a tub, and it's a V something. That's one I used to use all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I really wish that beauty standards on hair didn't exist, because I really I've been thinking about it for a while now, and I really do believe that if hair like this, a skin short on the sides thing on the top, that kind of hairstyle was viewed as more professional and more desirable, if that makes sense. Because I feel like if that wasn't the case, I would have an afro, because I used to be able to grow an afro when I was a child. And I kind of resent that fact, because I really want to grow an afro, because I really want to I really want to be more aware of my black culture and of my black side of my family, because I'm really not. And I don't really have any like sense of culture from my black side. But yeah.
Obviously, like, I can't really comment on afro hair, but I know that it's definitely still a big thing now that young black girls they feel they need to straighten their hair to be considered pretty, and they want to straighten. And obviously it's such a big thing because I know so many young, and I mean young, like 8, 9, who like beg their parents to let them straighten their hair because that's what all the girls at school have. And I'm like, if there was just like a bit more representation on in movies and TV shows and stuff of just how beautiful black African hair is, then young kids won't feel the need to then straighten their hair or do things like putting gel in your hair, which ends up damaging your hair. And it's like when you grow up, when you kind of look back at it and you're like, oh, I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, that's me now. So I regret using that gel.
It's annoying how there's like a distinct lack of the right kind of representation in the media when it comes to black people, because like for the longest time it was the sassy black friend trope and the black best friend trope in a way that hasn't really gone away all that much.
It's always like black people are a tool for white people to use. Like that's how they were portrayed. Like a black person was seen as a tool of comedy or comic relief in a thing, rather than like a person with feeling, if that makes sense. They just have that one dynamic, like Alex said, which is it's a very toxic thing to represent, because of that kind of like trope, like the sassy black friend, black women are now automatically seen as ghetto, and obviously you have like the black men shown as like aggressive and like, you know, like gangster and stuff like that, and that's like a stereotype as well now. And it's just like stereotypes are too easily portrayed in things, in like shows and stuff.
As well as like sort of the sassy black friend, also there's the stereotype of, you know, athletes and stuff, which is also shown in like just everyday sort of media. So I know, like, you know, like sports brands and stuff, they love using sort of like mixed black people as like the advertisement, you know, but they also struggle, they just don't want to hire like actual black people, so they end up hiring white people that look black, which I don't understand. I'm like, if you really want a black person to represent your brand, that's great, but actually hire a black person. Don't then hire a white person that does their hair in like dreadlocks, put on like darker foundation.
Like in media, cultural appropriation is a really big problem as well, where I'm not specifically saying white people, because I've seen some Asian people do it as well, but people that are not black are appropriating like hairstyles and culture without really knowing like the significance behind that culture and claiming it as their own. And I just think that's not good. One of you could like explain why it's not good better than I can.
I was just going to quickly add on to that, and that's like, when a black person does something, it is seen as like ghetto or not pretty. But the moment like the Kardashians do something and claim it as their own, everyone wants to be doing that. You know, there's so many things that originated from black culture that people don't even recognize, like eyebrow slits, fake nails, any like all that things that's now like used by everyone. No one recognizes the fact that it originated from black culture.
I also feel like people who blackfish as well don't realize how damaging blackfishing is, because it just makes black people just feel obsolete as a race, because you have white people tanning their skin darker and darker every day and are praised for it, when a black woman of that same complexion, you know, tries to show off like her beauty, she's seen as ugly and she's seen as like not feminine and just I just don't like that beauty standard, that like thing where white women who tan are seen as more beautiful as black women who are naturally born with that skin color.
I feel like tanning is definitely a conversation that needs to happen, but people just kind of avoid it. Like, tanning yourself 10 times darker is not okay. And like you said, it can be very damaging off for people who were actually that skin tone, because then they get all the compliments, whereas you're kind of just left there with like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also wish they'd just normalize just like what an actual person who has melanin looks like, because my arms are a lot darker than my legs, and that's normal. You know, like my legs are quite pale because obviously I don't go out in the sun, and enough. But that should just be normalized. It shouldn't just be like this sort of like one tone thing, if that makes sense.
It's a real problem, cultural appropriation, and like just picking and choosing which parts of Black culture they want to kind of like use as their own. Like there's in the song Black by Dave, which is it's just a stunning song. And I almost quoted it earlier back when we were talking about the struggles different races face. It's a song, it really does hit like every mark. I absolutely love it. I'm not even a massive rap fan, but I think Dave's brilliant. I'm getting off topic. But there's a line in the song, I've just had to look it up, which is Black is so confusing because the culture, they're in love with it. They take off features when they want and have their fun with it. And like they'll just pick and choose which parts of Black culture they want, and they'll use it as theirs, and they'll be praised for it, but not knowing it was stolen from Black culture. Like going as far back as like the beginnings of rock and roll. Like rock and roll as a genre was pioneered by black people, like Black women as well. Like Black artists like Little Richard and Chuck Berry were like B.B. King, Fats Domino. These guys were like doing rock and roll and doing that whole genre of music way before white people came along. And then suddenly Elvis comes along, and Elvis is regarded today as the king of rock and roll. Like he created the genre, but he never created it. It was created and pioneered by Black people, and Elvis kind of lifted it. And unlike artists like the Beatles, who would kind of give credit where it was due, because the Beatles used to tour with Little Richard, and whenever they would use Black artists as inspiration for their own work, they would always cite that, and they would always go back and say, this is where we got that idea from. We wanted to copy Little Richard. We wanted to be like Aretha Franklin. We wanted to do this, this, and this. Elvis would like, now I'm not going to pretend like I'm a massive Elvis historian, but from what I know, which is admittedly a limited scope of knowledge, but he would just take that, and he would, I don't know if he ever went back and gave credit where it was due, but he was hailed as the king of rock and roll for a genre he didn't create.
Most music genres this day were created and pioneered by Black musicians.
And even in today, like, I can't believe I'm the one bringing up TikTok, but even today, lots of TikTok dances were created by Black female TikTok creators. And yet there was like some sort of celebration of TikTok within the NBA, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but they got a bunch of, like white TikTok creators, like the D'Amelio twins. They were there.
Addison Rae, like people like that,
Yeah.
I think the worst part with that is, and this is someone did create a TikTok. Someone did create a TikTok video saying this as well, and they saying that if you look at like the Black creators' videos doing these dances, they're so much enthusiastic. They're putting their all into it, but then the white creators are sort of just doing it with like bare minimum, no enthusiasm. But they're the ones that get to go on these like talk shows. They're making so much more, got so many more followers, and it's like, yeah. And he pretty much said, "I'm so sick and tired of white people doing like bare minimum and going so much further away with it."
The point was proven very apparently on TikTok that Black creators' ideas and like the content that they create are being stolen and taken by white creators, and like, do you know what I mean? Like white people are taking, or white content creators are stealing back Black content creators' content and claiming it as their own. And there's very apparent evidence of that when the new Megan Thee Stallion song were like thought shit. Sorry, Megan. Song came out, and it's a really good song. It's a really good song to make a TikTok dance to, but there wasn't a single good one made because black people were like, you know what? No, we're putting a foot down. We're not going to make a dance for white content creators. Well, a dance for TikTok, or for the song, and a TikTok dance for the song, for it to be stolen by white creators. And yeah, it's just, if you look under the sound, I was thinking about like a week ago. If you looked under the sound a week ago, there was no very intricate dances that you see normally on TikTok. They were all just bad, and it just goes to show that white content creators are stealing content from black content creators and taking it as their own. It just proves that point.
And the worst part is it's not just on TikTok. It goes pretty much from A to Z, if that makes sense. Like even with makeup brands, like there are so many big makeup brands that steal ideas and things from like small black makeup
Yeah, no.
brands.
There was this woman, this black woman. She has a privately owned business. Okay. She had a privately owned business, and she had like a signature thing with unicorns. And she wasn't that big, obviously. Well, not obviously, but like, she wasn't that big of a business, but she's still enough to be a business. And then a big makeup brand came in and completely stole that idea, and gave no credit whatsoever to that black woman.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a thing because she didn't have a trademark, but she had like a classic thing that you could recognize was from her business.
Mm-hmm.
And then that makeup brand completely stole that idea, didn't give any credit, and then because she was such a small business, she was defenseless, and she could not physically do anything because if she did sue, she didn't have that much money, whereas this big makeup brand had more lawyers and more resources to fuel in to shut her down, so she couldn't physically fight the stealing. Yeah,
I think it's so sad because the thing is, as someone from a minority, we can't go get a job normally, right? Because our CVs will be turned down straight away. And we know that because there's so many things that have been done to show this. We can't create our own businesses because those are going to get stolen. We just can't make it, basically. Like the whole system, the whole world is just made in a way that we can't really do anything.
society is built for white people. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It would help that whenever a black business venture actually remained original and the original creators were given their due credit and it's promoted as this new emerging black business, it would help that every time they go mainstream, something doesn't happen to take them down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm thinking in terms of the Olympics this year, Soul Cap, the creators of a swimming cap that is designed for black women's hair, so it protects black women's hair and works naturally more in favor of black people, was banned from the Olympic Games and banned from international swimming races because this is a quote, it doesn't fit the natural form of the head. And that black business, which has been used by champion black swimmers, no longer used because not because it's a business for black people, but because even though it tries to accommodate black people and be more inclusive, it's still not normal enough to actually warrant a mainstream use.
Yeah.
And I think that whenever I'm like talking, I say like, and we can't do anything about it a lot, but that is just because sometimes I just get so hopeless about it. But the thing is, as a community, we can do something. And what we do need to start doing is we need to like start banning pretty much boycotting these brands that are stealing ideas from small black owned businesses and making it their own. And we need to generally just start shopping with small businesses. One, it's going to be quality product, right? Because they aren't bothered about money. They're more concerned with bringing you good product. And two, you're going to be helping someone actually make sure their brand doesn't get stolen or shut down. So we generally just need, as a community, to start shopping and supporting small businesses. And again, I feel like that's another one of those things that was just a trend, because I know last year everyone was opening small businesses, everyone was shopping from small businesses, but that's kind of died down as well now.
It's like when these things are in vogue, when people are like, yeah, let's be socially conscious, let's work with small businesses, let's do everything we can to accommodate these people. it ends up being a trend that lasts about 2 months.
Mhm.
Like, realistically, if you're looking at the people who posted black squares, who within that 2-week gap would promote black businesses, they would do these things. They would say, hey, look at me, I'm not racist. And they would do all of these things. And then when push comes to shove, like a few months down the line, they don't have that attitude because it's just not cool anymore.
Thing is, if you want to make true and real change and impactful change, you need to be consistent. You can't just come in, say you support Black lives and you support Black rights, and you acknowledge that racism, it does affect us very negatively and all this stuff. You can't just believe that for 2 weeks and then just drop it because you said it's not a trend anymore. It's not popular. It's not going to get you views. It's not going to get you likes. It's not going to get you anything like that anymore. You can't, like, our lives and our rights aren't a trend.
Yeah, and even being consistent does not have to be you are posting 24/7 on your story, all of these resources, all of the time, every single thing. Look, here I am, bam, bam, bam. That's not what being consistent is. Being consistent isn't constantly flaunting the fact that you're not racist. Consistency comes in when you take the opportunity to learn, you go out and you do your own reading, you do your own research. If you want to talk to your Black friends, absolutely go to them, have that conversation. But at the end of the day, they are not obligated to disclose all that information. It can be tiring talking about race for some Black people. I know, like, I personally, I'm all right with it. I know that for a lot of people, it can be extremely exhausting. Being consistent is even if you're not posting all the time, even if you don't have Black friends to talk to, or those Black friends are just fatigued with having that conversation about race, is still doing your part to stay in the loop and, you know, making sure that your knowledge is as up to date as it can be, so that when push comes to shove and it is time to support small businesses, when it's time to shout out about a cause, you have the knowledge to be able to do that in a competent way, so that if someone wants to turn around and say, why are you doing that? You can back it up. Because it's all about being an activist, sure, but be able to back it up. Because if you're not backing it up, then it's just virtue signaling. And virtue signaling is not going to get anyone anywhere. And arguably, virtue signaling could be one of the things that is, like, really damaging the conversation about race at the moment. Because people will, instead of trying to fix the issue itself, they will make Juneteenth a national holiday instead of addressing institutional errors. They will take an episode of Community off of Netflix because someone has full black face paint on, pretending to be a dark elf, and saying, oh, that's blackface, we don't support that, take that off Netflix. What's that going to do to help institutional change? At the end of the day, you need to be able to back up what you're doing and not doing it purely for the sake of appearing not racist. When you try and be an activist, it doesn't begin and end with sharing a social media post, calling it a day, and relaxing because you are not racist. That's not what it means. You have to be able to back up your knowledge, back up your activism, and back up what you know and how you help people. Because at the end of the day, that is what's going to promote change.
Mm-hmm. And with that, like you said, it is about going out and researching all these things. And I'm not on TikTok anymore, but when I was, I know for a fact there are so many accounts and so many people out there who that's kind of what they do on TikTok. They have these accounts where you can ask questions, like somewhere, like obviously on about Black people, and you can ask them questions and they answer them and they're happy to answer them. And you can ask them, like you can ask them on Instagram if you don't want to like push it out to everyone. And they're literally happy to answer any question you have, and they're happy to help you with anything.
Yeah, there's a lot that people do, and it's almost like people are willing to put more effort into appearing not racist than actually being not racist. Because the same people that were putting stuff on their story for the week, doing Blackout Tuesday, are the same people that would draw the line there and they'd go back to doing the TikTok dances pioneered by Black people, not giving them the credit. Not consciously, I add, but it's the fact that when you're doing activism, you're promoting that kind of, if you want to be that person, it's not enough to just appear as that person. You gotta live consciously as somebody who's going to fight change. It's not enough to just say, I'm not racist, put that to the back of your head and go on with your life. You have to make sure that every single day you are making sure that you're taking the right steps you need to do. Because like being an activist doesn't begin and end with a social media post.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, like, it's not a secret. Your actions do speak louder than your words. So sitting there just saying, I'm not racist, and I support Black people doesn't really show anything. You need to do it. You need to show that you support Black people and that you're not racist.
Another real problem with social media is that people are so quick to seek like white validation, like Black people,
Mm-hmm.
and they say things like, "I believe that white people can say the N-word in songs, as long as they don't mean it in an aggressive way," or that you could be right, you could be racist to white people, or like the police aren't racist. Like these like Black people saying this is very damaging will see that and then not believe other Black people. And it's only because like these Black people saying it because they seek the validation from these popular white people, and they want to be cool. They want to be seen as like, and like, do you know what I mean?
That's
Like,
something I've seen, like, definitely seen, like, the Indian community as well. It's almost like whenever someone's like saying an opinion, they're like, oh, well, this white person said it as well. And whenever we go to these Indian events, they see like white people in Indian clothing, they're like more quick to call them like beautiful and like, oh no, there's a white person here and they're wearing like an Indian dress. I'm like, but we're all wearing Indian dresses. Why do it's almost like they don't see something as valid or beautiful until they see a white person do it.
yeah, I feel that's what I mean. Like people like seek white validation, like validation from white people because of that reason, because they are seen as more beautiful, more like just more important in general, and that's a damaging thing.
Yeah, it goes to the white savior complex as well. Like white people, and I use the word vanity project lightly, but it's like when white people will go to, they'll go to another country purely for the sake of saying that they could help out, rather than going with the intention of helping out and benefiting these countries. Like they do it as a social media post and a collection of photos and draw the line there. Like there are so many schemes out there where people can go to other countries so they can put in the work. And I know people who were desperate to go on that over the past year, people who really wanted to be a part of that and really wanted to go in order to help. But there's a lot of people who do it to be like, look at these impoverished minorities. Don't worry, I can fix it. I understand you wanting to feel better, but it's hard to do something and genuinely improve yourself while doing it purely for selfish gains.
That also goes with like when there were a lot of protests going on, a lot of people like brought back like broken glass and stuff and then sold it online. And those companies that started printing the BLM like fist on like bags and stuff and selling it, which is fine if you're going to then use the money to put it towards BLM charities and stuff, but that was just like for their own selfish reasons. And everything they like, I know many small businesses that then like created products and put the whole like 100% profit towards BLM charities, but there were other businesses that were just doing it for themselves. This is back to something I said like a while ago as well, and that's basically I do tend to just get really like negative with them. I was like, when we can't do anything, we can, and I encourage everyone to just research and educate yourself more and supporting small businesses that are like Black owned, because there are really high chances that their ideas will get stolen and they will get shut down. So there is something we can do. And
before we finish, I just want to say the last thing I want to say in this podcast is that, dear white people, please listen to Black people when they say something is racist and when they're trying to explain what they face, and just don't try and argue, don't try and rebuttal, don't try and like defend yourself. Just sit and listen and educate yourself and be aware of what Black people have to go through. And that is the start of change, just acknowledging that Black people are treated differently, racism still exists, and that we need change.
Knowledge is power at the end of the day. There's so many avenues that you can go down to gain this knowledge. It does not just have to be, please don't overburden Black people with asking all of these questions. I'm sure I know I personally, I'm not too bothered. I'm happy to have the conversation about race, but I know that not every Black person is going to share that attitude. It's incredibly exhausting to constantly have to defend your own livelihood and why your life itself matters. So do be aware that there are so many avenues. There are books, there are papers, there are essays, resources, videos, all these things that you can use, and they're all at your disposal as well. We're in a golden age of technology wherein there are so many ways you can gain this knowledge. And like I'm going to say it again, knowledge is power. That's how I see it. There is your biggest weapon. If you genuinely want to fight racism, the biggest weapon at your disposal is education and knowledge, and passing that knowledge on to other people as well. And on that note, I want to thank you guys for watching us, trying to gain a little knowledge from us and joining in this conversation. Please do engage in the conversation with us. We'd love to talk to you. And again, a huge thank you for checking us out and for watching another episode of Change Z. We will see you on the next episode. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.